Very good afternoon. Thank you for your patience and for joining us here at this press conference at the UN office at Geneva with Mr. Philippe Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of UNRWA. He's here to brief you and take your questions, address the situation in the OPT. We'll have a few opening remarks from Mr. Lazzarini, then over to you immediately. And if you can identify yourself, or if I think I recognize most people here, but if you could kindly identify yourself nevertheless. Philippe, over to you. And if you can direct the microphone at you.
I found the button.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Good evening, or good afternoon, good evening. Sorry to be a little bit late. We had a longer member state briefing than expected. I came to Geneva after having spent a week in New York. A lot of discussion, obviously, also on the Middle East in New York. And some of them were very much related to UNRWA. And that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to share the latest update briefing to the member state here also in Geneva. So let me maybe start now. I started by giving an overview of our few field of operation, describing Gaza, that we are now 1 year almost 1 year into the war. It's an endless nightmare, Gaza. It has become unlivable. Basically, people are confronted on a daily basis with disease, death, or hunger. We have mountains of garbage piling up and sewage water leaking everywhere in the street, which basically families and kids are living in the rubble or in this sewage water, and there is absolutely, that explains why, for example, polio could reappear so quickly because of this just appalling, unsanitary living condition. I also reminded, because it's important to remind this, because now the population is trapped in 10% of the territory, that there have been pinballs over the last year, and basically they were constantly in movement seeking safety, which they never really found. We are also 1 year into this war, and we have still many hostages who remain captive, and the family are trapped in a terrible limbo. I have highlighted also today the plight of the children, which I believe are bearing the brunt of this war. In Gaza, 1 in 2 persons is below the age of 18. They have gone through a deep constant traumatic experience, and basically they are losing faith for a better future per se. We have today more than 620,000 girls and boys living in the rubble and being deeply traumatized. I have asked member states and partners that we make education a collective priority beyond the life-saving activities that we have in the Gaza Strip, and this is one of the reasons why we have started already a month ago, and despite the extraordinary complex environment in which we are, to bring back some of the children in a learning environment, providing first psychosocial support, but after that making sure that the practice of reading, of writing, or basic arithmetic continue for these children. I say this also because we should never forget that the only asset which has never ever been taken away from the Palestinian is education. They have been dispossessed over the last few decades about a number of things, but never education. Education basically was their pride. I was also flagging the situation in the West Bank, where basically we have a silent tragedy unfolding. What we see more and more is whenever there is the modus operandi, whenever there is security operation taking place in the camps, it ends up with large-scale destruction of public infrastructure, de facto inflicting collective punishment to the population. Just to flag also in the West Bank an interesting indicator, going back to what I said about education before, because of the movement restriction, but because also of the financial collapse and the difficulties also of the PA to maintain some of its services, we have seen a surge of more than 2,500 kids enrolling in our schools. So we did not just have the kids of last year, but we had 2,500 kids at minimum coming from the private sector or from the PA school to our schools. Of course, today we talk also about the situation in Lebanon. We were all fearing the spillover. The spillover is now taking place. Just to let you know that in Lebanon, as UNRWA, we are providing shelter. We have, as of today, 3,500 people in shelter designated in 9 different locations. What we have done is that we have opened our shelter not only for the Palestinian refugees, but also for the Syrian refugees and also for the Lebanese fleeing from the south. Now, I have also raised with the member states, and last week in New York, the constant attack the agency is under. As you know, as of today, 223 staff have been killed in Gaza. 2/3 of our installation have been damaged or destroyed. And basically, we can also feel that in the broader context of the occupied Palestinian territory, our space is also shrinking. You have seen the legislative effort also in the Knesset of the lawmakers aiming at evicting UNRWA from its premises in East Jerusalem, aiming at lifting the privileges and immunities, but also aiming at labeling the agency as a terrorist organization, which I believe would be absolutely unconscionable that a UN member state decide to label a UN agency mandated by the UN General Assembly a terrorist organization. It would go far beyond UNRWA. It would be a precedent which would certainly weaken an important our collective instrument from our multilateral system. You heard me many times here. I don't think that the aim behind this is any way related to neutrality issues. The neutrality issues, we can address them. We have had a total review from former Minister of Foreign Affairs Catherine Colonna with a set of recommendations that we have fully embraced. We had the OIOS report, which has also been shared with you, and we take any new substantiated allegation very seriously and make sure that there are thorough investigation. No, the real reason behind this is to strip, in fact, the Palestinian from the refugee status, but through this also to unilaterally modify the parameters for a political solution in the region. And I think it's also somehow short-sighted to believe that eliminating the agency would resolve broader issues related to the Palestinian refugees, such as the right to return, since the right to return, or for those deciding not to return, the compensation system within a political solution is enshrined in a resolution which was adopted far before the creation of UNRWA. This is in Resolution 194. So basically, and I will stop here. I had 3 messages for the member states. One of them is to make sure that the role of UNRWA be protected in any type of transition. If, and I hope, if we finally reach this overdue ceasefire, there will be a long period between a ceasefire and a possible day after. There is no one except a state or a functioning administration which can provide education at scale to hundreds of thousands of girls and boys in the Gaza Strip beside UNRWA. And I do believe it would be a mistake for all of us to get rid of a major instrument which would support the success of any transition. The second is related to the funding, because we had a funding event last week, and in New York, I was just reminding that the shortfall between now and the end of the year is still $80 million, and that the forecast for 2025 is very uncertain, look a little bit grim, because number of donors have indicated that they will enter austerity budget as from 2025. And the last but not least is a call to the member state to push back on all the reputational attack on the agency, and mainly the ongoing drafting of bills which could be adopted in Jerusalem to make sure that such a precedent is not taking place. So I think I will stop here, and thank you for having come late.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lazzarini. Okay, we'll take questions. We have a number of hands up here and also online. So let's start first. Okay, we'll start with Nina Larson of Agence France Presse, AFP.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking my question. Thank you. So I had a couple of questions for you, mainly focused, I think, on Lebanon. I was wondering if you could say what you think a potential ground invasion, what impact that would have for the Palestinians in Lebanon. And also what impact you've seen so far of the bombing or the airstrikes, especially perhaps on Burj al-Barajna, which is in the Daya area. If you could say how many Palestinians you've seen displaced. And my final question, is you mentioned the allegations against UNRWA, and there was a person who was killed who was said to be the head of Hamas in Lebanon, who also apparently worked for UNRWA and headed the Teachers Association. If you could say, address that issue, and also how that might impact the arguments addressed or lobbed at UNRWA. Thank you.
Thank you. I cannot speculate on the ground evasion, how deep, how far, will it impact the camps or not? I have no idea. So basically we will take it as it might unfold. What I can say is that for the time being in the camp, it was relative in the camp in the south, it was relatively safer than in other places, because we have open shelters and people came to the shelters, so there was a certain level of confidence in that. It's not the case for all the camps. If you want more details, I have to go back to my colleague in Beirut, because the situation evolves rapidly. Before coming here, I had the figures of 1,500 people in our shelters, and then before entering, I was reminded that no, it has significantly increased between my last update and now. It's already 3,500. So just to tell you that things are evolving. But on the third question, the staff member that you are raising, it's a staff member for which we have heard the first time an allegation in March, and the agency, because we felt that we had some substantiated allegation, have taken immediately the decision to suspend the concerned staff member, and the staff member was under investigation. So he was suspended, had no function, was not paid, and was under investigation. And we are still an agency with a due process, respecting due process and the principle of rule of law. So the investigation was still ongoing. But I can confirm that indeed there was an allegation, indeed a decision was immediately taken to suspend and to conduct this enquête.
Thank you very much. Okay, Beyza.
Thank you, Beyza Dönmez from Anadolu. I would like to continue on the Lebanon issue. What I would like to ask is, you already mentioned that the funding gap situation is continue and the next year is not looking great as well. What I would like to ask, the escalation to Lebanon and the increasing violence also in the West Bank, how these situations affected, capability of UNRWA responding on the different conflict fronts while things are ongoing in Gaza. Are you adjusting your plans and strategies and what you would be expecting from UNRWA? Thank you.
We have two types of activities. UNRWA is primarily a human development organization. We are primarily expected and mandated to provide education to hundreds of thousands of girls and boys across the region. We are providing the primary health services to the Palestinian refugees across the region. So these are the primary area of focus that member states and the resolution expect us to deliver. Now, there are situations of extreme humanitarian crisis, like the one we have seen unfolding under our eyes in Gaza. Because of the footprint of the agency, we have been the backbone of the humanitarian response in Gaza. I think the latest example was the polio, where I know that some were wondering if we could not ask an agency to do everything instead of UNRWA. But the polio vaccination campaign has shown that no, in fact, if we want to be successful, we have to partner and bring together our respective comparative advantage. And in this particular case, we had WHO providing the vaccine, we had UNICEF providing the cold chain, and UNRWA providing the location where the cold chain vaccine can be, but also the staff to administer to the people. Now, the priorities in terms of funding, I would say, a crisis, and we are always in a crisis, when it comes to the core mandate, the human development activities of the agency, it's a decision which needs to be taken collectively with the member state. The member state expect UNRWA to have operating school in 5 fields of operation: Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, West Bank, and Gaza. Now, if our core budget does not cover anymore the core activities, and there is always a tension, now for 10 years there have been a tension, because our particularity also is that we are expected to provide a service, a public-like service, public-like government-like service, but we do not have the fiscal tool of a government. So we completely depend on voluntary contribution, and that's where the tension starts. So would we reach such a situation? I would certainly have to go back to the member states and ask them, what do we want collectively to prioritize? I will not be the one deciding which children will have access to our school or not because of the lack of the funding. That kind of responsibility needs to be a shared responsibility.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll turn to this side of the room. Jamie Keaton, Associated Press.
Hello, Mr. Lazzarini. Thank you for coming to see us again. I have a few questions. The first is, going back to Nina's question, the person that I think Nina was referring to is this gentleman named Fatih al-Sharif, right? who was found out to be a top commander for Hamas in Lebanon. How can that happen that a top commander of Hamas is in UNRWA? I mean, I understand that you are paying close attention, and rightly so, to the suffering that many, many Palestinians are facing right now. And a lot of people have spoken out about that. But you're the head of UNRWA. That's your remit. So how do you explain that someone like that is in this organization, and that I'd like for you to explain, if you could, please, tell us exactly what the allegation that you received was about him. And you mentioned about disinformation and smear campaigns against UNRWA. When we learned that there was a Hamas commander that's a member of UNRWA, is that not some sort of sign that it's more than just disinformation that is being cast against UNRWA? And last question is, could you just please tell us what steps now, given this example, you are going to take to ensure that there are not other, Hamas militants that are in the organization of UNRWA, even beyond what you've already done? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's deconstruct the question a little bit. The first time I got an allegation about a staff, Fatih al-Sharif, who could be a member of the political party, the Hamas, at that time. The first decision I've taken is let's suspend, let's have an investigation, let's look at what the truth behind it. It's an allegation which surfaces, and I take it very seriously, and I say, if it surfaces, we need to look into it. And there were one or two a tweet and so on, where it sounded to appear. We keep hearing. So our attention now is really drawn. First decision is taken. As we say, each time you have an allegation, you thoroughly investigate.
The specific allegation was what in his case?
The specific allegation at that time was that he's part of the local leadership. Commander never appear. I never heard the word commander before you asked me, or before statement coming out today. So that was not that was not the part of the allegation. Sorry. So that's when we talk about the smear campaign, because I have been twice to Lebanon since this case arose, and I think I briefed you here. And in my discussion with the faction, we wanted to put pressure on the management because we have taken decision to investigate, to suspend, and possibly, depending on the outcome, to dismiss. There have been pressure. And I went to Lebanon, and I have been very clear with all the interlocutors that we will not give into any type of pressure. We have due system process within the organization. We will go through this, and whether this person is affiliated to this party or to this party or to this party, we will treat exactly the same way. I've even said at one point, if you want to make pressure, you are welcome to take over the keys of UNRWA if need be, but it was a way to say that there are clear red lines. The disinformation part, I hardly come back in social media. The CG went there to reinstate. Completely wrong. I've never reinstated. In the contrary, is to reiterate that the person is suspended and under investigation. We keep hearing today the person has been reinstated. We have taken absolutely no action. In the contrary, we have taken serious action from day one. We are expected, as an agency, like any other administration respecters of rule of law, to conduct an investigation. We have our due processes, and at the end of the process, you take a final decision. So this, even in a situation like this one, because there is a large-scale campaign aimed at undermining the agency. We have 33,000 staff in the region. Each time we have an allegation substantiated, and I insist on this, it's not enough just to, oh, I told you, I have a list of 5 persons, take the list. We do not have, as a human development agency, a police capacity, intelligence services, but what we do, we share the names. We always share the names. And the case you are raising right now here is certainly the case which was the best known in Beirut, where all the embassy, authorities, faction, everybody knew that this person has been suspended, this person was under investigation, meaning also that if it was such of a common knowledge, how come no one would have told us this? So I think what's obvious for you today was not obvious yesterday.
Sorry, can I just follow up?
Go ahead.
Well, what are you going to do now? I mean, there are many cases that have been raised. I don't know what the bar is for substantiated allegations or not, but there's, some people are saying there's as many as 100 or more people that need to be looked into. Are you going to do more? Are you going to dig deeper?
Let's go, because it's interesting you mentioned the 100, because there is a letter with 100 names which has been shared. I received this letter. I immediately answer, say, we take it very seriously. Can you help us? I will designate a person to come to deal with this. Can you provide us more information to take a decision if yes or not? We have the element for an investigation. Never been responded. Never, ever. So again, a list is not proof of anything. A list draw your attention, and we start to ask questions.
Okay, let's just make it, because we have other questions, so just really brief. Okay.
Sure. To whom? You never got a response from whom?
Well, the letter was shared by Israel to us. I received a letter from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with a list of 100+ names, and 2-3 days later, I respond saying, this is serious. We will, in line with all the spirit of Catherine Colonna's report, we will thoroughly investigate. We need support. We need help. We need substance to allow a proper investigation to take place. Until today, this has remained, in French, I would say, lettre morte. So translated. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll take in the second row, please.
My name is Satoko Adachi from Yomiuri Shimbun, a Japanese newspaper. You have been chosen as Nobel Peace Prize this year by PRIO. And how do you feel about becoming a symbol of Palestinian cause and then also defender of the Palestinian refugee statue at the international stage, at the same time facing a relentless attempt to dismantle UNRWA by the Israeli authorities? Thank
you. Thank you for asking the question. I believe that in my function as Commissioner General, I have to offer my voice to the Palestinian refugees, to their plight. They have so little and so few, in fact. UNRWA is an organization which they have always considered as their lifeline. And basically they see the attack on UNRWA as their entire world completely crumbling, in addition of what they are going through. So yes, being in this function, being exposed for this function, because UNRWA is also in the middle of this storm or seismic transformation taking place, a shock taking place in the region, impacting the Palestinian. I have to say, I feel good because I have the feeling that what we have done and have done has been guided by our principle, guided by the UN value, guided by the Charter, guided by IHL. And as long it is guided by this, whatever the attack can be, I feel that I am on the right side of this story. But again, I don't know. This we will know later. But I'm just trying to answer your question, which, to be honest, I'm not used to have this type of question.
Thank you very much for answering. Okay, we'll take two more in the room and then we'll go online. Let's start in the back, Moussa Al-Mayadeen. En français? Oui. Ou en anglais? OK. En français.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Lazzarini, j'aimerais avoir une clarification de votre part sur la question posée par mon ami Jamie sur Fatah al-Sharif et sur Hamas en général. Pour moi, l'organisation de Hamas, c'est une organisation pour les Nations Unies, c'est une organisation politique et non pas terroriste. En se basant sur ces données-là, est-ce que chaque membre de Hamas travaillant pour l'UNRWA, soit maître à l'école ou n'importe quoi, est un sujet à enquête, est un criminel, est un terroriste? Et suite à ça aussi, l'enquête menée par Madame Colonna a montré qu'il y a plusieurs membres accusés de faire partie du terroriste. Donc cette enquête a montré que certains parmi eux, ils n'étaient pas mêlés. Et là, c'est quoi leur... Donc, vous traitez comment maintenant ces membres qui n'ont pas été donc accusés de terrorisme ou autre? J'attire votre attention aussi que l'UNRWA a pris directement après l'accusation d'Israël l'année passée contre ces membres de l'UNRWA accusés de terrorisme. Vous avez pris directement une décision suspendant le travail, la collaboration avec tous les gens accusés, tous les employés accusés du terrorisme. Et est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, après une année ou bien après l'enquête de Madame Colonna, vous trouvez que votre décision à l'époque était un petit peu trop rapide? Merci.
Merci. La première question. Nous avons aux Nations Unies une politique de participation à la vie politique. Et si vous êtes un employé des Nations Unies, vous ne pouvez pas forcément au même moment avoir une fonction politique. Donc, ce que le rapport Colonna nous a demandé, c'est clarifier un peu cette politique. Parce que c'est très, très difficile. Je ne peux pas contrôler votre discussion lors d'un dîner de famille. Par contre, votre attitude, votre comportement dans les médias sociaux ou sur la place publique a une importance pour moi parce que sur la place publique, vous êtes aussi un employé des Nations Unies de qui on attend un certain comportement. Donc oui, il y a une incompatibilité entre avoir une fonction politique publique ou exprimer ces positions politiques dans la sphère des médias sociaux, par exemple, et être un employé des Nations Unies. Ça, c'est la réponse courte. Évidemment, si vous êtes un membre armé d'une faction politique, la question ne se pose même pas et on ira directement au licenciement. Maintenant, est-ce que j'étais trop rapide dans ma décision? C'est une question qu'on me pose souvent et je réponds à chaque fois, je reprendrai exactement la même décision dans une situation similaire. À l'époque, l'allégation étant tellement horrible, l'idée que des employés aient pu participer à ces massacres du 7 octobre sont tellement horrifiques qu'une décision hors de la routine procédurière devait être prise, et c'était aussi important pour garder en fait la confiance de nos partenaires. Et même avec une telle décision, nous avons eu 16 pays qui, en l'espace de 48 heures pendant le week-end, ont temporairement gelé leur contribution à l'agence. On était au bord de l'asphyxie. En tant que commissaire général, j'ai pris la décision qu'il était de l'intérêt de l'agence et de nos activités pour les centaines de milliers, voire millions de personnes à travers la région, de prendre une décision de cette nature. Par la suite, on a eu ce que l'on appelle par la suite, des enquêtes ont eu lieu. Donc, ce n'est pas que ces personnes ont été licenciées, pas d'enquête et l'histoire est terminée. Bien au contraire, une véritable enquête a ensuite eu lieu, est venue avec des conclusions. Pour certains, c'était très clair et donc le licenciement est confirmé. Pour d'autres, l'enquête indique qu'il n'y a pas d'éléments par rapport à l'allégation, mais il y a peut-être des éléments par rapport à d'autres situations qui pourraient enfreindre le règlement. Donc on attend encore et cette enquête, elle continue.
D'accord. Allez-y.
Une autre question concernant le financement de l'UNRWA. Le 16 pays dont vous avez évoqué tout à l'heure, est-ce que tous les pays ont fait marche arrière? Ils ont revenu à leur décision et financent aujourd'hui comme avant l'UNRWA? Et une petite question concernant la Suisse. Le Conseil national a demandé de stopper toute aide à l'UNRWA. Quel est votre avis? Merci.
Sur les 16 pays, 15 pays ont repris. Un pays maintient sa suspension, ce sont les États-Unis, parce qu'il y a une décision au Congrès que cette suspension durera au moins jusqu'en mars 2025. Vont-ils revenir ou ne pas revenir? Je ne peux pas répondre à cette question. Je pense que personne dans cette salle peut répondre à cette question. Mais pour l'heure, je reviens de New York, je reviens d'un briefing avec les États membres. La position de l'administration est de soutenir l'agence. La position de l'administration est de dire aux autres pays continuez votre soutien à l'agence. Mais tous les autres pays sont revenus au moment où le rapport intermédiaire de Catherine Colonna a été partagé. D'autres sont revenus quand il a été finalisé. D'autres sont revenus quand ils ont vu que effectivement les mesures préconisées commençaient à être mises en place. Écoutez, la décision de la Suisse n'est pas finalisée. Il y a une position du Parlement. À mon avis, c'est une position à contre-courant de la communauté internationale. C'est une position qui est incompréhensible, surtout venant de la Suisse qui a une tradition humanitaire, la Suisse des conventions de Genève, la Suisse du multilatéralisme. De prendre une décision de couper les fonds à la principale agence apportant de l'aide humanitaire aux Palestiniens, pour moi, et là je parle en tant que citoyen suisse, j'ai de la peine à m'y retrouver, à m'y reconnaître, et j'espère que cette décision sera revue.
Merci beaucoup. With your indulgence, we'll take a couple of more questions with Jeremy of Radio France International, and then we have Laurence Hier of Swiss News Agency Online.
Bonjour. Deux questions rapides. La première sur la liste de 100 noms, à peu près une centaine de personnes qui vous a été transmises par les autorités israéliennes. Est-ce que vous êtes en mesure de nous dire si sur cette centaine de noms, il y a des noms qui concernent les opérations de l'UNRWA au Liban, ou bien si ce sont uniquement des personnes qui sont employées à Gaza, en Cisjordanie? Ça, c'est la première partie. La deuxième question, c'est revenir un peu sur, en fait, en quoi la guerre au Liban affecte les opérations de l'UNRWA à Gaza ou pas. Je m'explique, on arrive bientôt à la date anniversaire du 7 octobre. On a parfois l'impression que le narratif en cours nous dit que le conflit s'est déplacé au Liban. Or, c'est ce que vous allez me dire, j'imagine. Le conflit ne s'est pas vraiment déplacé, il s'est propagé au Liban, mais il y a toujours des bombardements et des opérations à Gaza. Est-ce que cela vous inquiète que, un an après le début de la guerre, cette dimension palestinienne du conflit semble peu à peu s'estomper, s'effacer? On l'a vu également dans le discours de Benjamin Netanyahou aux Nations Unies la semaine dernière, où le mot palestinien n'a pas été ou très peu prononcé. Est-ce que cela vous inquiète qu'on ne parle finalement plus de Gaza?
Vous avez raison de dire que le conflit se propage et se répand au Liban. Évidemment qu'il y a toujours des craintes qu'il se répande encore plus, ce que personne n'espère. Maintenant, est-ce qu'il y a des inquiétudes de la part... les Palestiniens sont inquiets que la communauté internationale commence à exprimer une certaine lassitude ou que sa détermination exprimée pour l'instant d'une solution à deux États s'estompe à nouveau. Il y a la crainte que l'on retourne à un statu quo. Et le statu quo, c'est ce qui a prévalu pendant maintenant plus d'une dizaine d'années. Et effectivement, il y a ce sentiment que peut-être que la communauté internationale ne sera plus aussi généreuse. D'ailleurs, on a déjà maintenant quelques signes qui ne sont pas forcément des signes de politique extérieure, mais il y a de nombreux pays européens qui vont entrer dans un budget d'austérité à partir de 2025. Ça va impacter leur budget de coopération internationale et leur budget humanitaire. Et donc, ça va aussi impacter les montants qui normalement sont alloués pour la région. Donc, cette érosion de l'intérêt est effectivement une chose qui m'inquiète, mais qui inquiète au-delà de moi, quoi. Il y avait une deuxième question? Ou une troisième question?
Non, c'était la première sur la liste de la centaine de personnes qui vous a été transmise. Est-ce qu'il y a des personnes au Liban également?
Réponse très rapide, la liste d'une centaine de personnes concernait Gaza.
Merci. La dernière question, c'est Laurent Sieur, Swiss News Agency. Go ahead, Laurent. Thanks for your patience. Laurent.
Oui, merci pour la conférence de presse. Je vais poursuivre en français, du coup. La plupart de mes questions ont été posées, mais peut-être une série de questions courtes. La première sur le Liban. Est-ce que vous avez connaissance d'un nombre de Palestiniens dans les camps ou en dehors des camps qui auraient été tués ou blessés depuis la semaine dernière dans les différentes frappes israéliennes, en dehors évidemment du chef de la branche libanaise du Hamas? Et ensuite, sur le financement, est-ce que vous êtes revenu de New York de cette réunion de haut niveau ministériel avec des promesses de financement supplémentaires? Est-ce que vous dites toujours que vous avez de l'argent seulement jusqu'à la fin octobre ou est-ce que c'est un peu mieux? Et il y avait une demande de clarification de ma collègue Emma Farge que je relais du coup. Est-ce que vous parlez de 18 millions ou de 80 millions à trouver d'ici la fin de l'année? Merci.
La dernière question, c'est bien 80 millions et pas 18 millions entre ici et la fin de l'année. La conférence de New York, il y avait une cinquantaine d'États qui étaient invités à y participer. Elle a été rassurante dans le sens que de nombreux États ont indiqué que leur financement continuera au-delà de 2024. On a eu quelques promesses avant la fin de l'année, mais pour beaucoup des participants, c'est encore une période trop tôt. Fin septembre, c'est encore trop tôt pour vous dire si oui ou non il y aura des suppléments pour la fin de l'année. Donc pour l'instant, je ne suis pas forcément rentré avec plus de clarté entre octobre et fin décembre. Par contre, avec une réassurance que ces États ne sont pas prêts à laisser tomber l'agence et que ces États sont prêts, à se battre pour que l'agence continue à délivrer ce qu'elle a à délivrer. Donc, je sais que ce n'est pas forcément une réponse très directe sur les montants et autres, mais notre déficit reste à 80 millions pour l'instant, mais les signes qui m'ont été, comment dire, communiqués m'indiquent qu'on devrait pouvoir terminer la fin de l'année. Si on termine la fin de l'année, on va pouvoir fonctionner au moins pendant le premier trimestre l'année prochaine parce qu'il y a de nombreux contributeurs qui contribuent, qui payent leur contribution de l'année en début d'année. Et puis l'autre question par rapport au Liban, non, je n'ai pas de chiffres. Je n'ai pas de chiffres de nombre de Palestiniens. Ce sont des Palestiniens, très certainement des réfugiés palestiniens, blessés ou tués. Je n'ai pas cette information.
Okay, thank you very much. I lied, actually. If you have time for just one last question, John Zarakostas from Swankat and The Lancet, and then we'll have to draw this press conference to an end. John.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Lazzarini. I was wondering, sir, if you could give us a bit of a breakdown, given the increase in the needs, what would be the per capita distribution outside of the dire situation in Gaza for the Palestinian refugees that you are responsible for in Lebanon, which I think is close to 500,000, and nearly 600,000 in Syria. Lebanon and Syria are in dire straits economically. One is a war economy and the other one has imploded after so many crises. So and did you get any feedback from the member states if there will be any additional funding coming your way? Thank you.
Thank you. Just going back to the funding of the member states, this year we have been able to broaden the base of donor coming from the Middle East. For example, Iraq is a new donor, and Iraq will become a multi-year donor of the agency with the intention to join the advisory commission. We have also seen that there have been a broad solidarity from the global south, and countries who were not used to contribute to the agencies started to symbolically, sometimes even more than symbolically, to contribute to the agency. And thirdly, we had an exceptional year when it comes to the private fundraising. More than $150 million in 1 year have been raised, which the agency never ever experienced before. We had also some reassurances of countries we did not know if they would keep the same level of contribution in 25, would do so. And basically, during this conference, the one I had question mark confirmed they would continue to contribute to the agency. So that's for the funding part. Regarding the priorities, I think you are so right to flag Lebanon and Syria. Lebanon first, we are dealing with about 220,000 Palestinian refugees, maximum 250,000, so it's not 500,000. These figures was corrected a few years ago after a joint census undertaken by UNDP, UNRWA, and the LPDC, the Lebanese Palestinian Center at the Prime Minister office. The Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, as in Syria, are almost completely dependent on UNRWA. One of the reasons in Lebanon has been also because of the very limited access to the job market for the Palestinian refugees, and hence the higher level of dependency on the UNRWA lifeline. So doing priorities, we have now 3, I would even say 4 out of 5 operation area which are now in crisis or in conflict between Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and Syria. The only one which is not in a crisis situation but goes through economic hardship is Jordan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lazzarini. I'm afraid we have to end the press conference now. I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of all of us here for being here and for speaking at this press conference. So thank you also, colleagues, for staying late for this important encounter. Have a good evening. Merci.